It's really good to be here this morning with you.
Amen.
And here in a few moments, for those of you watching online and those of you here, we're going to be taking communion at the end of service. All are welcome to participate in this moment. If you have a relationship with God, you are welcome at His table. And maybe you want to pause me so you can go grab some bread, some juice, some water, whatever you have. It's the moment that matters, that you take a moment and remember Him. He said, do this and remember me, think on me. And we'll be doing just that. But until we get there, we are in a series, this is week 2, called God in the Dark. And what we've been doing thus far is we've been rolling alongside a guy by the name of Job, the book of Job. And last week we began by looking at this idea and this truth that God is in control. That He knows what He's doing, whether we like it or not, whether we understand it or not, and even whether or not we see it. He's got this. He's got it all. Everything around us, He has got it under His control. And so, if we're being honest, and even some of the conversations I had this week, many of us, we get this. We understand this truth, that He's under control. That He's got everything under His control. But there's this tension. And the tension is, yeah, I understand that He's in control, but why is it that there are such horrible things all around us? If He's in control, why is there hurt and pain? Why is there suffering and injustice and hatred and violence and uncertainty? And why is there cancer? And while we're at it, why is this COVID-19 virus thing still here? Why does all of this happen? And why is it happening? Many of us say, okay, God, I understand that you are powerful and that you are mighty, that you're in control of all things, but why are all of these things, other things happening? Why do these things happen? The question becomes, does He really care? Because when we look at the things around us, when we look at the fact that many of us are sitting here wearing masks, when we look at the news, when we look at society, and we look at politics, and we look at everything around us, the evidence kind of is like, okay, God, if you're in control, do you just not care? Are you just letting this stuff just roll? I mean, this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about this idea, this truth, of does He or does He not care? We're going to head back to Job, and we're going to find Job asking some more questions. He's in a moment in time in life where he's in a dark season, a season that I would say is applicable to many of us. He's in a situation where he wants to believe that God's in control. He's in a moment in his life where he wants to think that God is powerful and mighty, and he wants to believe that God's got this, but his life and his circumstances are kind of showing him something a little bit different. He's wondering if God really cares. And so, in case you weren't here last week, I can catch up really quickly. In week 1, we learned that Job loses everything. He loses his job, he loses his livestock, he loses his servants, he loses his children. It doesn't get much worse than that. And then we kind of concluded last week with him losing his health. And where we find Job today is he is covered from head to toe in boils and in sores. It's a mess. The Bible describes it this way. Look with me in the 8th verse of the 2nd chapter. Job then took a piece of broken pottery, and he scraped himself with it as he sat among the ashes. And it's pretty harsh and pretty clear of what he's experiencing. This is why you may remember what his wife says in the very next verse, verse 9. She says, Job, are you still maintaining your integrity? She goes, why don't you just curse God and die? She says, Job, why don't you just give up? Just quit. Do you see what she's done here? She has had enough. Have you ever been there in your life? You know, I mean, she's looking at his health. She's looking at their life. She's looking at everything they've lost. She is tired. She has seen enough pain. She's seen enough suffering. She's seen enough unanswered prayers. And she is done with God. She's done with Him. She's done with it all. And she says, God doesn't care about you. So why do you care about God, Job? Last week, we looked at the power and might of God as the God of the universe, the creator and sustainer of the Almighty. And today we want to explore a little bit different side of God. God is mighty and He's powerful. But is He caring? Is He loving? Is He gentle? This is what we're going to look at. You know, one of the most common references all throughout the Bible is God as a father, right? You see that all the time, as a father. That's the reference throughout the Word. And so I think maybe one of the questions we ought to be asking ourselves is, what kind of father is He? What kind of father do we have? You know, oftentimes in the middle of the night, our kids will come in and interrupt our sleep. It might be shocking to you. But oftentimes they will call out or they'll come into the room because they need something. And what I have learned is, depending on what they need will depend oftentimes on who they call out to or which side of the bed they go to. You know you have a side of the bed, by the way. Anybody who's married knows you have a side of the bed. It wasn't discussed or negotiated, it just kind of happened. And if you don't think you have a side of the bed, try to sleep on their side tonight and see how that works out. But they would come to certain sides of the bed, and what I've noticed is that oftentimes, if they need protection or they're scared or something of that nature, they would come to me. You know, they want me to swoop them up and to make sure I can guard them and protect them. If they don't feel well, if they need that comforting, they would go to Megan. Now, I will say that as time is going on, they kind of only come to me, but that's because I'm a pushover. And they know that whatever they want, they're going to get. But it doesn't matter. It's not a competition. And that's not even important, because the point is that I want you to see something. Traditionally, one would come to this side of the bed for comfort, and the other would go to the other side for protection. And here's the point. Many of us, we understand the Father when it comes to His power and strength. And stick with me for a second here. But for a moment, it's like Job is walking to the other side of the bed. And he's walking to the other side of the bed because he's like, God, are you loving? Are you tender? Do you care? Right now, I don't need your might and power. I just need a hug. Everything's falling apart. I've lost my kids. I've lost my livelihood. I've lost everything around me. Right now, I just need to be comforted. And so it's like he's walking on the other side of the bed, and this is where we find him today. In Job 38, 39, and 40, we see Job ask some very grand questions. And he asks God some questions, and these grand questions are brought back with questions that God puts on him about the universe. We looked at them last week. I'll remind you what they are. Job, God says, were you there when I laid the foundation of the earth? He says, were you there when I put all of this together? And in Job, did you determine the amount of water that is in the ocean? What about the snowflakes, Job? Do you know how many snowflakes are going to hit the earth this year? Do you know how many snowflakes are going to fall throughout the history and time? What about the constellations, Job? Do you have the power to put them in their place? And as he asks these questions about, did you lay the foundation of the earth? Did you put the amount of water in the ocean? Was it you that moved the constellations around and determined these kinds of things? As he did, it becomes very clear that God is powerful, He's mighty, and He's in control. But today, what's going to happen is God is going to shift gears, and He's going to go from talking about His power and might as creator and sustainer of the universe to taking care of a baby bird. And He really shifts gears. And I want to give you a couple of examples. Here's the first one. Job 38, 41. Who provides food for the ravens when their young cry out in hunger? Chapter 39, verses 1 and 2. Do you watch as a doe bears her fawn? Do you count the months until they give birth? We begin as we explore Job to see more tender, loving Father. He goes on to say in verse 19, have you given the horse its strength, or clothed its neck with its flowing mane? Verse 26, Job, does the hawk take flight because of your wisdom and spread its wings towards the south? Job, is that because of you? In verse 27, does the eagle soar, Job, on your command and build its nest on high? Do you see what's happening here? God is showing Job he's not just a powerful controller of the universe. He is a caring creator who delights in his creation. That's what he's showing. And Job listens as God speaks about the ravens who are hungry. And he listens as he talks about the doe taking care of the fawn. And he listens as he talks about the strength of the horse and the beautiful eyesight of an eagle. And there is something comforting about this for Job. And the very thing that's comforting to him is this, that God cares for his creation. There's this passage in Job 12. I know we're at the end of Job as we're studying, but back in Job 12, there is this passage that's a little bit odd. We'll just call it what it is. Because Job says that we should be talking to animals. And some are like, say what? Yeah, but it's in there. But I want you to listen to the poetic words here, because there's something we need to see. Look at verse 7 through 10. But ask the animals what they think, and let them teach you. Let the birds tell you what's going on. Put your ear to the earth and learn the basics. Listen, the fish in the ocean will tell you their stories. Isn't it clear that they all know and agree that God is sovereign and that he holds all things in his hand? As you look at creation, and as you look at the animals all around you, you begin to see a God who is in control, and you begin to see a God who truly cares. And so what I want to do for just a moment, assuming you're still awake, if the person next to you's falling asleep, hit them hard, okay? It's in the Bible. It's in there somewhere. It's after Revelations, okay? What we want to do for just a few moments is we want to talk to some animals. Does that sound like fun? Okay, one of you agree. Well, we're doing it whether you want to or not. Let's talk to a couple of animals. Let's do what Job said. How about the woodpecker? What would the woodpecker say to you? Well, when a woodpecker hammers against a tree, he is moving his head 15 times a second. I want you to understand how fast that is. That is twice the speed of a bullet. And do you realize how quickly his head is beating against that thing? Theoretically, the woodpecker should kill itself when it hits its head against the tree. But there's something between the brain of the woodpecker and its peak. There is something that serves as a shock absorber that God put in there. Engineers can't figure it out. They've tried to figure it out. But God did it so that creation could be cared for and care for itself, so that it could find food, so that it could create nesting, and so that it could live. Creation, enjoying the care of its creator. What about the honeybee? You remember in school learning about the honeybee and how they would go and they would collect pollen and then bring it back to the hive, and you remember all that? So I'm going, no, I don't. Well, you didn't pay attention in school. They talked about the bees. You're like, I remember the birds and the bees. No, we're talking about bees now. Okay, the honeybee, and they would go collect the pollen and take it back to the hive. And have you ever wondered how they would give directions to the other bees? How they would tell the other bees, you know, where to go get honey. It took scientists a very long time to figure this one out. How does a honeybee tell other honeybees, you know, where to go? I mean, you come back and, you know, the bee is going to be like, you got to go down about 600 feet, turn left, then go down about 1,000 feet, and then turn right. and then quick left, and there's the pollen. No, that's not how it works. How do honeybees do it? You know how they communicate directions? They do it through an intricate dance. I mean, this is, I don't know if it's the, electric side boogie woogie. I don't know if it's the Dougie. I don't know, if it's the robot. I don't know what that dance is. But I do know that God, the Creator, cared for His creation enough to give them a way to communicate, design a system that works for them. What about pigeons? They can kind of be annoying sometimes, can't they? Well, pigeons can fly thousands of miles to the same roosting place without any navigational changes at all. Thousands of miles. They use the magnetic force of the earth to navigate their flights. What's the point? It's like God built in them their own Garmin. They have their own navigation system because the Creator cares for His creation. We keep going. I could keep talking about animals all day, but I hope you get the idea. What Job is saying is talk to the animals, and you will see that God is a God who cares about His creation. You will see that God's got the whole world in His hands. All of it. He's in control. We know that. He is in control, but also that He cares about His creation. Now, I want to get real for a second. I want to get very unedited for a second. Because here's the reality. Some of us are sitting here and we're thinking, that's great. I never knew anything about the woodpecker and the honeybee lesson. That was special. But I didn't know I was signing up to go to children's church today. Some of you are sitting here thinking, that's nice, Jason, but I'm still in a mess. My world is falling apart. People around me have lost their minds. Sickness is still real. My marriage is still in shambles. Unemployment is still a real issue for me. I still have that doctor's report. Things are still dark. So, I hear you. You say He cares, but I'm struggling with this one. And this animal passage isn't cutting it for me. If that is you, I get it. So let me just talk to you for a second. I want you to imagine for a second that you're a parent of a 3-year-old. Some of us literally are a parent of a 3-year-old, but I want all of us to imagine that we are a parent of a 3-year-old. And we've got to take that 3-year-old in for their shots. It's not fun. And so you've got to take that child to get their shots, and you try to explain it to them that you're taking them to a place for their good. You're taking them to a place because you care about them and because you love them. And you try to explain this, but they don't understand. All they know is that you are taking them to a place of pain. And so you continually say, listen, no, I don't want you to hurt. There's nothing that I would ever want to do to make you hurt. But I'm taking you here because I care about you, and I'm doing this for your well-being. But they don't comprehend it. Why? Because they're 3. Why? Because it doesn't make sense. And can I tell you something? I think it's the same for many of us in this room. That we go to places of where we are being taken care of, maybe places of pain and seasons of life that are not ideal because they don't make sense to us, and because we can't comprehend it, we shake our fist and we shake ourselves and we say, I don't like this, I don't want this, and we think that maybe God is not caring for us, but our Father is trying to show us that He loves us, and He's trying to show us that He cares for us. Maybe imagine it like this. Let's take that same 3-year-old. Imagine this. You take that same 3-year-old in your home. You begin to walk them around. You take them to the hall closet and you open it up and there's a bunch of blankets in there. And they say, what's those blankets for? Those blankets are there for when you get cold. And then you take them down the hall and you take them to the pantry and you open it up and they say, what's all that food in there for? You You say that food's in there for when you're hungry. And then you take them into the bathroom and you open the medicine cabinet and they say, what's all that medicine in there for? And you say, that is all in there for when you don't feel well. You continue walking through the house and you show them this, that, and the other. What's the point? The point is that there is evidence all around you that you are cared for. There is evidence all around you that you are loved. And that someone is looking out for you. But the reality is, for so many of us, we don't see it. What God is doing for Job, and what God is doing for you and me this morning, whether we see it or not, is He is reminding all of us to take a look around and realize that we're cared for. That He loves us. That He is in control. Don't forget that. He's got the might. He's got the power. He created all of this. But He also says, come to the other side of the bed and let me hug you. Open your eyes and see that I am taking care of you. I always have, and I always will. Do you see it? You see, it was in Job's darkest hour that he finally saw God clearer than ever before. I mean, you read the first part of Job, it's clear that he just didn't really need God. I mean, he had it all together. He had tons of money and tons of livestock. He wasn't in a dark place at all. It was in the darkness that brought him to the place that he needed to see God clearer than ever before. That's why Job 42:5, we read it last week. That's why he said this. My ears had heard of you, God. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. In other words, he says, Lord, I had heard of you, but now I'm hearing from you. God, I had known about you, but now I know you. And what Job is saying here is that it is in your weakest moments and your darkest hours that you see God clearer than ever before if you will just look for Him. It's in the dark seasons and moments of life that don't make sense to you. I want you to hear me because some of you are there. Some of you have been there for a few months. It is in your darkest season, in the darkest moments of life. It's in your hurt, it's in your anger, it's in your suffering, it's in your uncertain times that God is nearer than ever before. It is where you can see Him like you've never seen Him before. One of my favorite passages in all of the Bible, David said it in Psalms 34. He said that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He goes on to say, not only am I close to the brokenhearted, he says, I rescue those who are crushed in spirit. And so here's the beautiful thing. If you are brokenhearted, if you are crushed in spirit, you are in a perfect place for God to swoop in and hug you and love you like you've never been hugged and loved before. 1 Peter 5:7 says to cast all of your cares, all of your anxieties, all of your issues, all of the stuff that you are stressing yourself over, to cast it on Him. Why? Because this is the second part. Not only is He in control, you're to bring all that stuff to Him because He cares about you. So here's my question to you today. This is what I want you to take away, and we're almost done, I promise you. Do you believe this? Do you believe that He is the God, the Creator, and the Almighty of the universe that has all the might and strength? But do you also believe that He is a caring, loving Father who wants what's best for you? He is constantly providing things for you all around you, who delights in His creation. Do you see the evidence? Because if you don't believe this, maybe you should take some time to ask the woodpecker, to ask the honeybee, and they will tell you of a loving, caring Creator. Jesus uses the same comfort and the same idea for His followers in Matthew 10. Not a single sparrow can fall to the ground without your Father knowing about it. Not a single sparrow, not a bird, not one of them are going to fall to the ground without your Heavenly Father knowing about it. And the very hairs on your head, they're numbered. He says, so don't be afraid. I love this. Don't be overwhelmed by the things that are going on in and around your life. In the season that you're in, the darkness, don't. Because look at this. You are more valuable to God than a flock of sparrows. The greatest evidence that God cares for you is a cross. You know, people often tell me that they wear a cross necklace to remind them of Calvary, of Christ, rescuing them from their sin. I often say that when I look at the cross, I see something very different. I see a Father who cared about me. Yeah, he cared about me to die for me, but I see a Father who's constantly caring for me. He's constantly loving me when things don't seem loving. He's constantly kind to me when things don't seem so kind. He constantly does what's best for me when things aren't going so great. God sent his Son to bear a cross, to bear the punishment that we deserve. In my opinion, that's all the evidence that we need. But he says to look around you at the creation. In the midst of chaos, in the midst of madness, in the midst of darkness, God calls us to his table. That's why we do communion today. At the darkest hour that Jesus and his disciples would see, he says, before I suffer, I desire to eat this Passover with you. I desire for you to sit at my table and to take communion with me, that we know as communion. Why would he do that? Because he knew we were going to need to be reminded that he's in control and that he cares for us. That's why he says, do this and remember me. Do this and think on me. Do this in the midst of your darkness, in the midst of your storm, in the midst of your chaos, in the midst of your mess. Sit at the table. Come to the other side of the bed and experience your Father. And that's what we want to do right now. And so he called those closest to him. Are you close to him? Do you know him? Is he your father? Are you his child? Is he your shepherd? Are you his sheep? He called those closest to him. And he said, yeah, I know things are going to get dark. They're going to get crazy. It's going to get overwhelmed. And you're going to need to remember me. And so this is what I want you to do. I want you to take this cup and I want you to take this bread and I want you to think of me. And so he takes the bread and he gives thanks and he breaks it. And as he breaks it into pieces, he gives it to them. And he says, this is my body. He said, which is given for you. When you do this, when you take this, when you eat this, remember me. And then he took a cup. And he said, this cup, it's a new covenant between God and his people. An agreement that is confirmed through my blood, which is poured out for you as a sacrifice. Remember this. Father God, as we're still, as we think on you, as we look around and see the earth, the sky, the sun, the water and the rivers and the oceans. As we look into the trees and we see the birds, as we look and see the deer, the animals all around. Lord, may we look into our closets, may we look into our homes and into our careers and into our relationships, and may we see that you are a God who is in control, and that you are a God who cares for his creation. And Lord, may we recognize that you cared so much for us, that you died on the cross for us. And Lord, that there's nothing you won't do for us. If you would give up your Son to bear a cross, surely you will intervene in our life where we need it. Lord, may we feel your love and embrace right now. May we feel your presence. And Lord, may we leave this place truly having experienced your presence in a special way. Lord, we thank you and we praise you today. Amen.